Hello and welcome to Kimboshi Radio, where we have a newly finished Basho to talk about and an old Yusho winner, so to speak. Nick, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good with Takakeisho getting his fourth Yusho win now.
I know, I'm feeling great about it as well. And I mean, let's just start digging into it because there's obviously a lot of controversy going on with it. But just to break it down on the positive side first, this is actually kind of like a weird comeback victory for Takakeisho, because within the first week of the tournament, he was actually 5-3. He had 3 losses, lost on day 1 to Fuji, who was kind of riding high after his finish in the last Basho. And then, surprisingly, took back-to-back losses to both Shodai and Tobizaru. But then went on a tear the second half of the tournament, 7-1, and just because the leaders kind of fell back, his continued consistency in class pulled him through there. I was really impressed with him coming... It's weird to say from the Ozeki, but he kind of like submarined this one, right? Like, he surfaced out of nowhere and then took the Yusho.
Yeah, and it's been... I'm happy about it, especially, coming back from like his injuries and like all the issues that he's had to still get an 11-4, which is typically he typically gets 11-12 wins. Like that's, nice to see. And he fought. I'm surprised that he lost to Tobizaru personally, or like a couple of these losses, but I'm like overall he still fought well and beat all the people you expect him to.
I agree. And, when you talk about injuries, that's something I neglected for sure. Like, he didn't even start taking practice bouts, I think, until like 3 or 4 days before the Basho. So when I was going back and listening to our previous show, you and I were both making points about how we were really cautious about him coming here, having missed the entire last tournament, and then really skipping the entire quote-unquote preseason training between Bashos until the very end. But it's good to see a guy in this sport who appears to know his body this well, that he can maximize the amount of rest and do exactly enough sort of upkeep right at the end to get himself up to tournament shape.
Yeah, and I don't know if part of that's because he's injured so frequently that he knows kind of how to play that, maybe more than some others. But still, he put up for it and he got the win.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe he has a doctor who is particularly attuned to the regimen that he requires, and they are good at making this together. Who knows? But we can't talk about Takakeisho's victory, which happened in a playoff after all, which is not surprising in an 11-win Basho that you'd see a playoff. But we have to therefore also talk about Atamifuji. So, shockingly, another guy, I had actually put up a poll on the Kinboshi Sumo YouTube asking people which of the young up-and-comers they were most sort of enthusiastic about getting a potential surprise Yusho win here, and it came down to Gonoyama and Atamifuji. But there he was. Now, you and I were again like, we made a lot of points about how the guys at the bottom of the Bansuke, he should, if he was healthy, be able to feast upon them and sort of pad his record and push himself into contention, which he definitely did, and I know you've got more to say on that as well. But what's impressive, no matter what, is everyone now can see what we were talking about. That shoulder is brutalized, just like Hakuoho's was when he contended for the Yusho in the last Basho, before now having to sit out to the point that he's going to fall back to Makushita. And Atamifuji's hands and wrists are ravaged, and yet he put up this great record after several impressive Juryo results as well.
Yeah, and I was hoping that he'd come through and do like fairly well this time, because he really got rocked the last time he came up. But I was like, it's a good learning opportunity. And the bottom was softer this time, as we had pointed out, but he really did phenomenal, and I was very impressed to kind of start with the positive aspect from that. But then with his loss to Takakeisho, honestly, like I'm good with it happening, but I'm also kind of glad, because truthfully, he really did fight a lot of the lower level people, lost to or beat all of them. And then when he did fight the upper level fighters, like he lost, like Daisho and Takakeisho, Asanoyama, they all took him.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So if he had gotten the Yusho, it's like, would it it obviously would have counted. I'm not gonna I wouldn't take away from him from that, but he just didn't have a chance to fight as many of the top ranked people.
Yeah, exactly. It's that thing that always happens when one of these low rankers pads the record and gets into the conversation. We're never saying they don't deserve it, but there is just that caveat to be aware of. Like Atamifuji got a win against Mitakeumi, a former Ozeki, but and he was even having a good tournament at the time when Atamifuji fought him and beat him, but no one would say that Mitakeumi in 2023 is the Mitakeumi of late 2021, early 2022.
And he did beat Takayasu, Tobizaru, and Abi, which are all impressive for realistically his experience level.
Yeah. These are veteran fighters. These are good. Abi has won a Yusho still recently. Tobizaru is obviously at the peak of his career right now, bouncing between the high Maegashiras and low Sanyaku. And Takayasu is still living this sort of late career renaissance, keeping it going when a lot of his peers, Goedo has retired, Tochinoshin's been forced into retirement from injury, things like that. So while he still has been falling short, that is an impressive win. But like you said, for the final 4 days of the tournament to go 1-3 with losses to Sekiwake Daisho, a loss to Takakeisho in the regular tournament on day 13 and in the playoff, and then a loss on the final day when he could have locked up the win by himself to Asanoyama, who we know he's great, we know he's a former Ozeki, but right now he's a Maegashira too. And he was injured coming into this tournament, and we really saw that at the beginning of this tournament for Asanoyama. And so, honestly, if not that, Atamifuji could have wrapped it up, that was his chance, the Asanoyama fight, to be completely honest. So that's just what happens.
No, and I agree. And there's no shame in that for him coming in for his second time in this division. It's still a phenomenal tournament for him.
Yeah, by all means. But we will be excited to see what he does in the middle Maegashiras, because I really do think he's going to get pretty much it's going to be identical to what happened to Hakuoho, hopefully with the exception of shoulder surgery. I think he's going to slide up to M9, he had 11 wins just like Hakuoho. He was runner-up just like Hakuoho. I think that's about where and so we'll see him fighting in the mid-Maegashiras and see what that looks like, where he has some more, regular course of events fights against maybe some of the lower Sanyaku and stuff like that. But our opinion, so we, I think, are in agreement that of the two 11-win guys, the right guy won. Takakeisho deserved that, but Sumo Twitter, just like Twitter in all parts of the world, are showing their ugliest face, and because Japan is the way it is, the Sumo Association, the old dogs, retired wrestlers and coaches are all jumping on the bandwagon, where they're saying that Takakeisho had a sidestep to win and that was shameful and he didn't even try to go head-to-head. So, Nick, obviously the man should be stripped of his Ozeki rank, banned from Sumo, and his name should be strucken from the record books, right?
Oh, of course. That's the only thing that would make sense.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it's a win, and at his level, it's at fighting a Atamifuji at the rank he was at. There was no option but to win.
Exactly.
With the pressures that they've assigned, if he would have lost, they would have ripped him apart.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's fine. We can talk about double standards and unfair treatment and stuff like that, and just move on. But it's so frustrating. And Chris Sumo came out with a video where he actually had quoted some active wrestlers who spoke to him off the record, and all of them uniformly were like, no, he did the right thing. You have to win that fight. If you have a chance at the Yusho, the only thing that matters is winning it. I don't care about anything else. So I thought that was very interesting that all of his peers are just yeah, no, obviously, that's what he did. Because again, there's so much pressure on him to do so. And Ozeki fighting a 21-year-old Maegashira 15. There's no way he's allowed to lose that.
No, and I saw some people who were like, oh, should this even count as towards his... towards a potential promotion for him? I don't even know if it... I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
He got the win. He had to. There was no option for him.
Yeah. And it's really frustrating that it's these people out of the game. The one person I saw out of the game, though, who it made me happy was on Keisho's side, is Asashoryu. Because Chris Sumo, again, brought up a great point that... famously, Asashoryu in the great rivalry with him and Hakuho actually lost this like exact same scenario, a final day fight with the GOAT. Hakuho, and Hakuho sidestepped him, and Asashoryu lost that Yusho, and then he came out and he was like, no, what? Who cares? All you have to do is win. Like, Takakeisho won. That's what matters. So this is a guy who lost it, and again, to Hakuoho, the GOAT. Like, the GOAT used the sidestep too, but I guess we don't need to talk about that. We just need to rip on Takakeisho right here. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's fine. Obviously I have a caveat of like, I'm an Abi fan, so I was like, Hankus, don't bother me.
You are and it's inured.
I am definitely in the minority there of even people who are willing to say that they like him.
Yeah.
He's my favorite.
That's great.
But a lot of people pointed out that Atamifuji rightfully, like, he was very jittery, and it's like, it was the obvious, he wasn't prepared for like the pressure of that. And it's just another good learning lesson, but he doesn't have the experience to even think that, oh, this might be coming. I need to pay more attention when I jump off.
Yeah. Who was it? They quoted, there's like a Terunofuji quote that's something about like a good wrestler in every match is slowly whittling down every option until he comes up with the best one or whatever. But that's like what you're talking about. Takakeisho slowly whittled down, and he's like, well, this is the highest percentage chance I have to win. So if we're going to talk about mental game for wrestlers, that's what really matters, and Takakeisho did that right. And a young guy like Atamifuji, who, like you said, he really looked rattled. Like, when he lost to Asanoyama, I knew it's not going to happen. The same way that I just knew, sadly, I mean, we can pivot to this too, that Takayasu, it wasn't going to happen. He got back into it later in the tournament when Atamifuji started to fall back. But when I watched Atamifuji beat Takayasu, and then what always happens to Takayasu is it's like he loses one match that was tough, and then he immediately is like shaken and loses the next one. So he lost to Daisho the very next day. And even though he did get back into it and had a chance to be in the playoff on the final day, it wasn't going to happen.
No, and that one, there's always part of me that's like, this is it. This is the time he's going to do it. And it would have been great, but like you said, it's like you also have to temper it with like, there's a chance it's not going to with him.
Yeah, and like at this point for my own mental health, I think I'm just like broken on Takayasu, and I just need to not believe in it, because like, holy smokes, it caused some real damage to me in some previous Basho of recent memory. Like, oh god, it's been rough.
I will say it's heartbreaking watching him just like reach for it and get so close, and just at the very end just be like, oh, yeah. Nope.
I'd love to be able to have like a sincere talk with him. I have no idea, like, to find out where he really feels. Like, obviously the guy wants to win, but I wonder if at this point in the career, because like his career is so stellar, it's so much better than 90% of, I'm probably more than that, than like any Rikishi can dream of, and so I'm curious if he's actually satisfied, especially at this age. Like, if it's enough that he's still competing at this late time, if he's made peace with not winning a Basho. Obviously, we know he wants one, but, like, is it causing any mental torment to him? I would think not. I don't know.
That's a good question. I mean, it's not like he's doing poorly. He still went 10-5. If he didn't win the U show, he's still, like, up there, and he typically is, minus, injuries and the occasional underperformance, but for the most part, he's good. He's still performing high level for his age.
Exactly. Like, we're not now there's a slight age difference or whatever in his favor, I guess, but we're not watching Tochinoshin Part 2 here, which was really brutal for, I know me and you were huge Levon fans, and that was hard to watch.
It is interesting commenting about Takayasu's age, and then I looked, and I am a month and a half older than him.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why I am always like close to him, is I am like, I don't know, like 3-4 weeks younger than him. Like, he's our guy, man. He's our guy.
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh, he's too old. Then I'm like, oh no,
I know,
I'm too old.
I'm long since too old, and I never could have done it even 10 years ago.
No, like I don't know. I'll still keep that in the back of my mind. I feel like I'm always forever going to be like, maybe this is the time. But tempered with the fact that I know it's not going to happen.
Yeah, we're always going to get our hopes up with every 8-1 with Takayasu. We'll be like, maybe, but we'll see. But he wasn't the only 10-win guy. There were actually some lower guys. Again, sort of these submariner types coming up from below. Midori Fuji finally bounced back for a 10-5. Hokuseiho kind of is finally showing the class that we think he ought to have with a 10-5. And Myogiru, the KG veteran, he was one of my sleeper picks for this. Did not quite contend, but kind of like put it together at the end and still got 10 wins. So some good performances there, but are these all, Nick, just cases of guys falling into the lower ranks and kind of padding some records? Like, do you think any of those three are going to push on in November?
It's tough. I don't think Hokuseiho is... I think he can go up a few, but he just doesn't... He's so big and he's so strong that he still relies on that maybe a little too much, in my opinion. That I still think he has a lot of refining to do. I love seeing Midori Fuji blow up like this. He's so small, and he has total opposite. He's so small that he has to be so technical to win all these fights against people who are just double his size.
Yeah. And it was, dude, my man was 2-5 at the halfway point and then ripped off consecutive wins in the last 8 days of the Basho to get to this 10-5 record, which was just great, including wins against Myogiru, who we talked about, who had a really good Basho, so that's impressive. And he beat also Shonan Umi, who's one of these young up-and-comers, and I just thought the Daishoho win I really like, because Daishoho is just a mountain of a man, so just that's kind of exactly the matchup you're looking for with a Mighty Mouse like that.
Yeah, and he's somebody like, he's not going to win all of them forever, just simply because, like, even with technique, you can only really overcome so much. Once you get somebody who's big and is technical, you're probably going to lose, but it's still so fun watching him really overcome that, because I feel like he has to try so hard.
Yeah, and to just bounce back from, like, basically ever since he had his last 10-5, where he lost the last 5 days of the tournament, like, he kind of that has fallen apart since there was a 6-9, a 4-11. So then to see him finally bounce back with another 10-5 is just good, because, like you said, he's good for the division. That's if you're going to have open weight classes, then you gotta have these little guys to make it exciting.
Yep.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm with you on the other guys, like, and especially this young crop. It's a little frustrating because, like, Hakuoho is still the guy that I see and think of as being the potential for the top. Now, we have tons of these young guys, but I'm starting to get enough of a sample size that I'm like you. I'm like, yeah, Hokuseiho I'm convinced will rise to Sekiwake one of these days and will therefore have a chance at Ozeki, but I'm like, I don't know beyond that. Like, I don't know that he's the next coming. Kinbozan, 9-6. Again, yeah. That guy's definitely going to be a Sekiwake at that point and will challenge for Ozeki. No idea if he'll do it. Atamifuji, I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. He didn't stay healthy the first time, so we'll see about that. Like, and now at this point, we talked about last episode how even Hakuoho, because of this shoulder surgery and injury, I'm not sure that he's going to do it. And our boys, Gonoyama, that was good, 9-6. They gave him a lot of fights against the big guys. Maybe he slowly over time develops a repertoire where he can grind out those big fights. Like, he lost to Daisho, he lost to Hoshoryu, he lost to Takakeisho, even Takayasu. So some of those kind of top dog fights he still is not getting done. And Shonan Umi, he did good at M5. He went 7-8. He'll drop down a little bit, but he stabilized much better than like Kinbozan did when he got jetpacked.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one thing I'm worried about with Atamifuji is he was the contender, so they're going to throw him up as high as possible. It's like we've seen so many cases where that just hasn't worked.
Yep.
And it's been detrimental to the wrestler. Yep.
And I mean, whatever. We'll just see it. By the numbers, I think he'll go to like M9. Maybe a little higher, but we'll find out. But speaking of by the numbers, what's interesting about this Basho to me is how many guys did how abysmally. Like at M17, Daishoho at 3-12. There are 5 guys who basically need to leave the division by the numbers. Like, it's really hard to keep them in it. Kagayaki, Daishoho, Chiyoshoma. There's just no way you can save them. But really, at M14, with Aoyama and Kotoshoho going 5-10 as well, and Nishikifuji even at M13 going 5-10, like, that's that's 6 dudes who honestly should all be gone. And there are not even close to 6 guys who should come up from Juryo. I don't like, with how good Juryo has been lately, maybe that's what spoiled me, but I don't like a single one of the promotion contenders coming up from Juryo. Like, J3 Tomokaze going 11-4, sure, like, there's no way you can keep that guy out. And Ichi Yamamoto went 13-2 and won the Juryo Yusho, so he has to come up, but he did that from all the way down at J7, so it's like such a big leap. Otherwise, J1 Roga 8-7. I'd rather keep him at J1 again. Kita Nawaka 8-7 from J2. I'd rather just bump him up to J1 next to Roga and see how he does. Oshoma disappointed. Tohakuryu could come up. He went 10-5 from J4, but I don't know that I'd do it. Like, so it's this awkward thing where I think this time we're going to see a lot of these guys. I think we might see Aoyama, Koto Shoho, Nishiki Fuji, all 3 get saved by kind of how bad Juryo was this time.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Is that is that I think that just out of pure luck they're going to stay up in the division.
Yeah.
And I think, which is fine. I mean, it's, as much as he is underperforming, I really just don't want to see Aoyama drop out.
Yeah, because you and I have talked about this, and we're not trying to be like negative, but like it's the end. Like we've already seen this twice. We saw this year. I mean, like we saw Tochinoshin go down and never be able to climb back up, and now he's retired and he's gone. We saw Kaisei go down, not be able to come up. He's retired. He's gone. Like it's going to happen again. He's gone. If he drops to Juryo, he might fight a couple Basho there, but he is not. It's over.
No, I agree. And it's just like, oh, it's just kind of an end of like some of the older guys tend to top out that aren't holding on. Like, I mean, like Takayasu, he's still doing fine, but it's like some of these guys that were so good, but are just like, it's still sad to watch them drop.
Right. And I'm not trying to, I don't know, like it's impossible to say this like here. Oh, well, I'll just be honest about it. Like, yeah. I like it because these are the white dudes who are in there, and on some level that makes it easier for me to relate to them, but I also think it's interesting that sumo had multiple eras, right? It had the era of the Hawaiians, and that was really cool. Those guys were dominant. It had the era of the Eastern Europeans, because you also had Baruto, you had, a lot of these different Eastern European guys, and now they're gone. And it frustrates me that sumo made these rules to limit foreign wrestlers. And now we're in the era of the Mongolian. There have always been these eras of international dominance within sumo, like away from Japan. And so I just think it makes it more interesting. That's my thing. Like, honestly, I root for Daisho and Takakeisho because on some level, like, they are the Japanese champions of a Japanese sport. Like, and I get those storylines of trying to like redeem the sport for Japan against the Mongolians who are dominating it. And I understand the frustration that came from sumo fans with the Hakuho obliteration, and that Mongolian trend that started with Asashoryu. And before that, the Hawaiians, there were always lots of rooting against the Hawaiians because the idea was they were coming in from the outside. So, like, I don't know how to talk about this because I don't want to seem jingoistic in either direction or anything like that. But I will say that, in my opinion, a more inclusive sumo is a more interesting sumo. And as long as those storylines don't become hateful, they are way more interesting.
No, I agree. I don't think, like you said, it's not coming out of place of spite. You just want to see variety mixed in to keep things refreshing versus just a system pushing it. Versus a system pushing it for the Japanese wrestlers to be on top. You want to see it like Takakeisho, who he's at the top because he's the best.
Right. Exactly. And when we lose Aoyama, like, this is kind of the end of the Europeans. Shishi is coming up, but he went 9-6 at J8. Like, I don't even know that Shishi will ever make Sekiwake like Aoyama did at the peak of his career. I just don't see that from him. He's too raw. He got into sumo too late. So maybe he continues to be a fast study and improves to the point that he can contend for Sanyaku. But, like, it's different, right? We had this era of like Makuuchi having like 5 or 6 Eastern Europeans up there and really contending up at the top, and now it's going to be Shishi. So it's just sad to see an end of that, the same way that sumo essentially like legislated the Hawaiians out too, like that era's over and we don't see Hawaiians in sumo anymore. So
no, and it's hard too, because like when you can look at you can look at the people coming up, and you're like, it's gonna be years before you get more than just like Mongolians coming in. It's like, it's just fun to have some different stuff come through.
Right, because for those who don't know, the JSA put in these rules limiting, I think it's as harsh as one. You can only have one foreign-born Rikishi per stable. And yeah, there are a ton of stables, but one of the things that helped these foreign-born Rikishi coming through is that they fought in the same stables. You know, they were there to be a support network with each other. Like, dude, to move from Georgia or Bulgaria to Japan is really hard, but it's really helpful if you have another guy there going through what you're going through and are able to kind of work together to support each other while you're trying to make it in this incredibly difficult world. And I use those examples specifically because for those who don't know, Aoyama and Tochinoshin were in the same stable. They came up together. Like that was a huge deal.
Yeah, and I think it also helps just even, I know it kind of goes against a little bit of the traditional nature of sumo, but it also, when you bring in like the Mongolians, like the techniques have to change because they're bringing in new stuff.
You're totally right.
It just makes everything more fun.
Yeah. It's we love watching Hoshoryu, and it's really interesting that he comes in with that Mongolian style wrestling. I think it's called Bulk. I do not know if I'm pronouncing it right. But these guys are coming in with this like very grappling oriented sport that's a traditional sport in Mongolia, and it's actually really similar to Mawashi fighting. But so like that's the stuff we're talking about is exciting. Like Midori Fuji is essentially a grappling type like that. Ishiura used to be like like that when he was in the division, and like you're saying, that makes it exciting. It's not just giant men ramming into each other, Oshidashi style. It's good for the sport to see those things, and it doesn't mean that only Mongolians can do that, because one of the most interesting things for me before his injury was watching the Wakataka Kage Hoshoryu rivalry come up. I don't know how Wakataka Kage felt about Hoshoryu, but I feel like I know Hoshoryu hated Wakataka Kage. and Wakataka Kage fought that same style. Like, it was super interesting watching them go against each other, both trying to do the same thing, like strong arm and flip, like get a leg trip in there. Yeah, like you're saying, that did nothing but bring more excitement to the division while simultaneously not stopping a Japanese guy from coming up with that same style, Wakataka Kage.
Yes, and which actually segues into, this is one of the first times in a little while we haven't had an Ozeki going Kadoban, because with Hoshoryu there.
Yes. Hoshoryu.
Things looked a little rough there for him for a little bit.
Oh,
but
man.
Again, it's like his technique, he's still at the top level, pulled it out.
Yes, and tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm super interested. Like, it was brutal. I mean, he was 3-6, and that's deep. That's into day 10. He's looking. He had one loss left to give on day 10, and he gave it to his fellow Mongolian Kirishima when he had to fight him. But otherwise, my man, 8-7, the classic Hoshoryu, right? Like, always coming through in the clutch.
I was really worried about him for a while, because especially now that he's Ozeki, and after Kirishima going Kadoban, and on his first, I was like, no, please, let's break this cycle. And Hoshoryu hasn't really performed like this low since I think it was when he hurt his ankle, oh shoot, I can't remember, end of last year, where I'm like 8-7, I'm like, oh man, this is getting real close, but I'm super glad that he pulled it out.
Yeah, you're right. He took a Fusensho loss, he was 8-7 in January this year because he had a couple losses because of that injury, and then he came back and was like, win, loss, and then on the last day secured it against Onosho. Just crazy. But this is good, I think, for us, because you and I were talking before the relatively disappointing performances from these Ozeki in this tournament, in 8-7 and 9-6 and in 11-4 with the Yusho win, but obviously 11 wins is kind of the minimum. Well, you can look at the promotion criteria, right? Like 33 wins across 3 tournaments is what someone needs to get promoted to Ozeki. Therefore, what the JSA believes is the minimum record an Ozeki should achieve is 11 wins, which is another reason why it's stupid that they were all being so fussy about Takakeisho. I'm like, he did what you wanted. Yeah, it's the minimum, but you're the one who said it was the minimum, and he did it. But at least these guys, at least we're not losing them, you know? Like, this is not the Shodai Mitakeumi era.
No, and I have 100% faith in all three of them that they're going to be sticking around for a while.
I think so too. I think that this is going to be long term. Once they get stable up here, I think this is going to be good for the sport. I do not know. I think I'm still, I don't know. Kirishima, with the combination of health, age, and performance, I still kind of think is the best bet to make a Yokozuna run over Hoshoryu. But to throw cold water on that, Takakeisho, the JSA, confirmed, I think it was yesterday. We're recording this on, what is this, Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday, after the Basho. But they just confirmed that Takakeisho is a Yokozuna contender, which is really surprising to me. But I think basically they're saying if he wins the next Basho, they're going to make him a Yokozuna.
Oh, that's exciting. I didn't hear that yet.
It's super new, just dropped. Yeah. And it's interesting because I'm like, he does not, this is not like his last Yokozuna run where he really had the credentials, the bona fides, because he was coming off of 11, 10, 12, 12, like really impressive tournaments there. But I think at this point they're saying that because it's within the window of this year that he's been doing so good, he's actually now won 2 championships within this calendar year, because he won the January Basho as well, that they would give it to him. And again, though, this I think very much is just the JSA trying to get out of the mess they have made for themselves with the Atamifuji situation. Not that, I mean, injuries are injuries, but like I say they've made it themselves because, like, yeah, pushing this guy to keep coming back because you wanted a Yokozuna, like, here's what you get. Sleep in your bed, you made it.
Yeah, and I do think, unfortunately, that makes me a little nervous for Atamifuji, that if they're willing to kind of like be flexible with Takakeisho for a group that's not known to be flexible, that's not a good sign.
No, I think there's no way, like, again, to be honest, I wanted Terunofuji to ride off into the sunset after his 14-win Yusho comeback, but I also wanted Takakeisho to lock up the promotion to Yokozuna before that. Like, everything was going to work out, except that it didn't, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know I haven't heard a whole lot about Terunofuji with his injuries, but with it now being his back, it makes me worried.
Yeah, it's everything, right? Like, his knees aren't good, and he just had that arthroscopic surgery, and now, like you're saying, he's got back problems. We've seen that he's got the elbow braces on. Like, it's not... there's nothing positive about that.
No, and as I was really hoping he'd come back, grab his couple of wins, get his 10 shows, and then just retire. But at this point, I'm like, I also don't want him to, like, be physically crippled for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't.
If he's not already.
Womp womp. I mean, yeah, he probably is. I don't know. Our friend Ian posts a GIF that is Terunofuji just sitting in a rocking chair petting a stuffed animal, and in Japanese hiragana it just like keeps flashing the word regret. And I'm like, yeah. But let's turn the sadness spout down a little bit and just talk about this. I'm not sure if you're aware, Nick, but Takakeisho owns Kyushu. It is far and away. Allow me, please, to read off the last few results. So, in 2022 November in Kyushu, Takakeisho goes 12-3 and finishes runner-up, only losing in a playoff. In 2021 in Kyushu in November, he goes 12-3, runner-up. In 2020, he goes 13-2 and wins a playoff. That was actually his second Makuuchi championship. In 2019, he fell off a little bit. He was 9-6, sadly. So very disappointing. But 2018, the year before that, he had been 13-2 and won his first ever Yusho from Komusubi, where he actually got the Fighting Spirit and Outstanding Performance Prize. And in 2017, before that, again, very disappointing, only 11-4, but he got the Outstanding Performance Prize because he beat both Yokozunas in that tournament. And before that, let's go ahead and go to even before he was in 2016 when he was in Juryo. He went 12-3 in November in Kyushu and won the Yusho to earn his promotion up into Makuuchi, again at an incredibly young age. And then just for good measure, to go back to 2014, his very first ever tournament in sumo, he went 7-0 and won the Jonakuchi title. He owns Kyushu. He owns November. Do it for us, Takakeisho.
That is so. That's very exciting to hear. And honestly, he's so good.
I know.
Like, it's crazy, and I know it's kind of like last year when he was getting, he's kind of catching some controversy for the Mitake Yumi Shodai failures. And it's like, he's getting a little controversy here, but I'm like, he's a spectacular fighter.
Yep. And if he makes Yokozuna, I want us all to just appreciate it because it's also going to be a short run. I do not think it's going to be as short as Terunofuji's run, but like, the injuries cannot be denied, so I just hope that people will appreciate it. And I think sometimes, like, we did a whole episode talking about breaking down some numbers for Takakeisho, and so those were just some more numbers I wanted to show of just, like, in certain stretches, in certain lenses, like how dominant he is when he's healthy. And I just hope that we can appreciate him as sumo fans because he deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of play with the exemption rules from being a Yokozuna.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, it worked in Terunofuji's favor. It's like this could help Takakeisho as well, because he has smaller scale injuries. And
yeah. And Hakuho, like, and Kakuryu, both, the JSA kind of let them do that to kind of maintain it. And so if the JSA is going to try to wait this out and find their next healthier, like, long-term Yokozuna, then this might need to be something like... It might be good. They might, show some slack.
Because they won't have a choice.
Exactly. If they really want to be adamant about never not having a Yokozuna, then this might be what you need.
Especially when this is the only Japanese contender.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see if he makes the run. That's kind of the big one I'm coming in for next time. In addition to seeing what they do at the bottom. But before we wrap it up, is there anything else you were excited to touch on about this Basho or coming up that you want people to pay attention to before the next one?
Let's see. No, I don't think so. I think, unfortunately, Tobizaru is going to drop down again, but I think he'll be back maybe in 2. Yeah, he'll probably be back for January as another Komusubi again, but overall, I just want to plug the other Sekiwake that we didn't talk about.
Yes.
All positive again.
Yeah. All the Sekiwaka, again, I am extremely happy. Kotono Waka looked really worrisome. 6-6 going into the final 3 days, won all 3 of his bouts, which was awesome. Daisho restarting his Ozeki march here with a solid 10-win tournament. So that's very exciting to see him back at it. Wakamoto Haru is still plugging away. Like, the top of the Sonyaku is just what I want it to be. Again, kind of like we were talking about before, letting foreign wrestlers into the division. Contrast is important, right? I'm not saying, like, yes, I understand when people say, like, it's boring when the same guys win all the time, but you need to have good fighters at the top so that it is exciting when someone like Atamifuji comes up from the bottom and starts beating them. That's what's exciting then, but you can't have that if you don't have a solid core at the top, which we now have.
Yeah, like we did for 2022, where even the Sekiwake level outside of Hashoryu were changing almost every other Basho.
It was insane. Yeah, it was brutal. And now, like, the guy's looking like... I think Hokutofuji will jump up and take one of those Komusubi slots without question. And then, like, I don't know if they'll double jump either Asanoyama or Abi to Sekewake and the other one to Komusubi to try to balance the Bansuke, or if they'll just keep Asanoyama at M1 and jump Abi up into that Komusubi slot. I don't know. But regardless, Abi and Asanoyama are 2 guys who I would feel contribute to this solid core in Sonyaku if they end up there.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So lots of good things to look forward to. I'm very excited for another Takakeisho Yokozuna run. I hope it happens. The man owns Kyushu and he owns November. So here's hoping that he can take care of his body before November the way he did before September. And until then, you and I will try to take care of our own bodies and not slip into the malaise of donut-induced depression from a lack of sumo.
No promises, but I'll do my best.
Same. All right, Nick. Talk to you soon, and thanks for listening, everybody.